I feel like I help everyone. I feel like I'm a good person. I don't do like malicious things. So why am I not happy?
Hola, you are listening to First Gen Healing, a podcast on Latinx healing and awakening journeys. My name is Priscila Luna. I am your host, and I'm going to let today's guest introduce himself.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Romero. I am First Gen. So First Gen for undergrad and also for my master's. So I grew up about 20 minutes from the Arizona-Mexico border in a small town called Amado. I spent most of my career helping students on college campuses. So I've done that in many different facets, but that's been the majority of my career. And then more recently, I've embarked on a self-healing journey, and I've been really focused on prioritizing joy. So more recently, I've been posting a lot about what it means to prioritize joy and what my journey's been like, but then also helping others do that as well. I do have two siblings, and I'm the youngest of the three. And
Okay.
we are all first gen. We all went to actually the same university, the University of Arizona.
Okay. How is it living in a border town or growing up in one? Did that change your experience, do you think?
I think so. I think there was more tension, if I'm honest with you, like around like racial tension, because I don't know, even like in school, it was like pretty much, I would say like half Latino, maybe like half like white students. So
Oh,
I think
okay.
there was always this like tension between both that I always felt, and it always felt very like apparent for me. And I think close to where I grew up, there's also this other like smaller town, and it's a big like retirement community. So we had a lot of like older like people who have come like from like rich, backgrounds who are there. So you can already tell there's gonna be some tension, around like
Yeah.
a big like Latino population. So I think that was one thing that I always felt, but I also, one positive thing that I really liked is that I was able to really stay connected because traveling to, Mexico is so like close that it was like just a part of my life. It wasn't something that was like, I would never did that. So even like on weekends, you would go there, we have family there, like things like that. So
Yeah.
I think for me, like that was something special that it was still like a part of my life, even though I was living in Arizona.
Yeah. I wonder if that empowers you in some way because I imagine, like, for example, I grew up not going to Mexico often or very few times. But I always thought like I would always see the kids who would go in the summers or like they had a lot of family, and I like now I look back and I'm like I wonder if that gives you the sense of community that sometimes as first gens like here in the U.S. can feel like is not present. I just wonder if it gives you como a foundation to stand on. Or like this is my culture and this yes there's tension but it's due to this and I love this and I can stand
Right.
behind it in a way.
I think so because, well, I think for me, it was whenever I would go and like visit, I felt like at home there. Like, cause I didn't feel like I needed to code switch. Like, it was just like, oh, I could just express myself how I would express myself at home. Like it's not, any different. And I mean, obviously, like when you go, people like can see that like you don't live there, right? But
Yeah.
it was still this like, I don't know, it was this like way that I could express myself in Spanish that I wasn't able to like in the States that I think just felt very like, I don't know, familiar and nice. And I think that's one reason that I always felt very like prideful in being Mexican. Like I don't think I ever felt like it was like a negative aspect of me.
Yeah.
I always felt like a pretty strong like foundation in that. And yeah, because for me, I think the only tension that I was feel is because other people were trying to say that it was a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, yeah, I think that being able to visit there, it did create kind of like a nice foundation.
That's cool. That's awesome that you had that to, like, because you were experiencing that much tension, that you had also like that relief, from it. Tell us a little bit about what growing up as a first gen looked like for you.
In the beginning, it was really scary, I would say. I remember when I was about to graduate high school, I was like, I don't want to go to university. Like, I was really scared. And I felt like I really doubted my own, like, just like how intelligent I was. And I was like, I'm not ready to go to a college. Like, I want to just maybe start a like community college or something like that. At the time, I also was interested in like animation because I was really into animation then. But unfortunately, it's really pricey to go to like art school. So
Okay.
that was one of the reasons why I wasn't able to do that. So I actually was really pushed by one of my older siblings to still apply. And I think it was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to, but they kind of made me. So I did apply to, the university and I got in. And yeah, I think for me, I don't know, I always felt like a really big disconnect when it came to education, just because I felt like we never really talked about things that like related to my home life, like it felt like I was like in two worlds. Like there's like Alex when I go to school and then there's Alex when I come home, because there was just so many different, I don't know, like the environment was very different. Even the language was different, right? So that code switching of like, oh, like that's me at school versus me here.
Yeah.
So thankfully, I did have two of my older siblings who had gone there. So I had like some experience and advice. But I don't know
Yeah.
if this is like a younger sibling thing, but it's very much like, I want to do my own thing, Like, like I like the advice, but I'm also like, no, like I wanna figure my own like journey out. So that
Wow.
was interesting because I think for me, I ended up getting really involved in a lot of like support programs. So I don't know if people are familiar with like TRIO, but that's like a federal program for like first generation and then low income students. So that's really where I think I found my community, because at my school, I don't know, it just felt like no one was like me. And like it also seemed like everybody knew what they were doing. When I would go into spaces like Trio, where it was like predominantly first generation students, that's when I really was able to like, talk about like things and relate to other people and their
Yeah.
like lived experiences. So I think college for me, it didn't really pick up till maybe like sophomore year, where I kind of started to kind of embrace the challenges that came with it. I think I started to kind of switch my mindset of like, I'm gonna do what scares me, kind of a thing. So if I am scared of it, I'm just gonna do it.
I think you've touched on a lot of important things. One, like you said, even the language is different at home. So, like what you're living in school, learning goes beyond sometimes the type of conversations we have at home, or we reach a level where parents can no longer help us, which
Yeah.
I don't know if you experience it, but I think for the majority of the time, I feel like even though they could or maybe tried to help, they still didn't understand the language well enough or the nuances. And so it's kind of like you're helping yourself through the whole process.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is tough because, yeah, I mean, especially because like my parents, they don't understand the schooling system, right? Because they're from, like a different country. So even just like knowing like the basics of how schooling works, it's just very different. So yeah, I think it is very much that like you kind of need to figure it out on your own. And thankfully, I did have, two siblings who,
Yeah.
I had to at least, they could at least help me out, and like give me some
Yeah.
advice. So I did have that support, but yeah, I think it is really difficult, especially for parents. And then I always think like it must also be scary for them, like they like obviously want to protect you, they want to help you as much as possible, but they just, aren't able to with the current circumstances that they were in.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, lucky you that you had two older siblings. Because I don't know if you know, like some of, I think, like for example, as eldest, I remember enrolling myself in middle school, in high school, and college, and like filling out the forms for my parents and like
Yeah.
being that person. So thinking that you had two people to go to, that's really cool. I'm glad they also were involved enough, you know, to be like, you can do this, like you should. And yeah, that's awesome.
No, for sure. They definitely pushed me because it was a little bit of that imposter syndrome, you know, of like, oh, I don't know if I'm capable of doing it. And yeah, they gave me that like push. And I
Yeah.
definitely needed it, so that was good.
Yeah. And then you also mentioned something important. I think a lot of us, when we end up in college or university, we find community through groups. Kind of like you're in this big new world, and so you need some sort of commonality. And so cool that you found it. So you said then in sophomore year, kind of something switched. Do you know what triggered that switch of like being scared of change versus like embracing it?
I think I just started to think of it more as like, I want to get the most out of this experience that I can. And, you know, things are scary and I want to at least try, you know? So I joined like a Latino fraternity, which that was like really scary for me at the time. And, but it was something that I was like, oh, like I'll never be able to do that. And then I was just like, why? Just try. Let's just do it. And then I think once I accomplished that, then I think that kind of like did like a domino effect because then I started doing other things that I thought were scary or maybe that I wasn't like capable of. And maybe it was like a bit of rebellion, maybe because like, I don't know, you know, being people of color, being like first gen, like we're told a lot what we aren't capable of doing, right? Whether that be like directly or indirectly. So maybe for me, I don't know. I'm thinking at the time maybe it was a bit of rebellion. Like I'm gonna show these people that I can do what I want to do, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I think that might have been the switch.
I see. And what were some of those things that you were like, I'm gonna show them that I could do this?
Well, one of them was studying abroad. So I was really like scared to study abroad because I was like, I don't know. I didn't know what it was like. I knew a lot of people who were more like affluent went to study abroad, and I was like, I don't know, that's scary. So I ended up studying abroad actually in Italy for a summer. So that was something that was really scary for me, and that was a life-changing experience. You're just like, I don't know, exposed to like a different way of living, you know, and it's just very different from the US.
Yeah.
And I think it just kind of opens your mind to other ways of living that maybe you like hadn't thought about before.
What part of Italy? Because I love Italy.
So I was in, it's called Orvieto. It's like a small town. It's about like an hour away from Rome.
That's so awesome. My goal is to live in Italy at least like 6 months or a year.
Do it. I
Yeah.
say you do it.
When I went to Rome, well, when I went to Europe, it was right after college, similar where I was like, man, some people spend their whole life wishing that they went to Europe, you know, and then like that's their retirement gift. And so I had a friend out there and she was like, Priscilla, like the time is now. And so I went and, you know, in debt, the cheapest way I could, but I went out there and I saw, like, I went to Paris first. And I remember seeing the Eiffel Tower and I was just like, okay. Like, it didn't, like, do anything for me, you know? I was just like, all right. I think I went to Amsterdam next. And then I went to Rome and oh my God, something happened in me when I like literally when I got out, when you get out the metro, the Colosseum is like right there. And I was just like, like, I don't know. I mean, even what it represents, I don't resonate with like the Colosseum, right? And like what happened in there, but just like, it felt like home in a weird way. And then, I researched my name and it comes from like the, like, ancient times and in the Roman Empire, I think, or something like that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's like related basically my name to that, to Rome. And I was just like, whoa, like, yeah.
So maybe there is like a connection. Yeah, because I kind of feel the same. Like, I think it's always been in my head, like, oh, Italy, like, I'm going to go there one day. I'm going to go there one day. And then it was just like, it happened. And then I was like, I don't know. And I felt kind of similar where there was like, I don't know, there was this weird like feeling of like connection to it, even though I don't know of like, if I'm like, if my ancestry is connected to it. But yeah, there was always this weird, like, I don't know, something about Italy. But yeah.
Ooh, how interesting. You were there for a month, and then are we entering the era of where your healing journey or awakening journey starts, or not yet? Is there more to talk about before we head there?
Yeah, so I think during that time, I was I was really trying to find like a community that also related to like my culture, and I think the Latino fraternity was a part of that. But I was able to find it also in Mexican American Studies classes. So I ended up taking a Mexican American Studies class as like a gen ed, so a class that would just fulfill like a requirement, which I also didn't want to take, but I was pushed into that. But it ended up really well because for me that was the first time that I was like, oh, like I can learn about things that like relate to me, like things that are
Yeah.
actually like personal to me in an education. So it kind of like blurred a little bit of that, like separation that I felt all the way up until then.
Yeah.
And a lot of emotions came with that, right? Because then I was angry because I was like, why didn't I experience this in high school? But
Yeah.
what led to that was that that specific major had a lot of Mexican American faculty members. So that was the first time that I also felt like I saw someone like me in a position like
Wow.
that, and
Yeah.
that they like like knew what like life was like culturally, right? Like and they were able to also exist in this academia world. So I took a class called Chicano psychology, and I met this professor. Her name
Wow.
is Dr. Andrea Romero, and that was the first time I think I was like, oh, like I want to be like her. You know what I mean? Like that was the first time that I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, like I found like a teacher that I was like, that's what I want to be like. And she, we, I would like talk to her like during like drop-in hours and things like that. And she was doing
Wow.
amazing work like community wise with like Latino students, and like she was doing this like pipeline project for education. So I ended up doing like an independent study and doing research with her, which was something that also I was like, I would never do that, but that was like terrifying, right?
Yeah.
But I loved it because it was like community work, and then we were able to translate it to like research and academia. But
Mm-hmm.
at the heart of it, it was still helping like a community. So that
Yeah.
was super impactful for me.
Wow. Just the name of that course, Chicano psychology, that sounds so interesting.
It's funny because like I ended up double majoring in psychology and Mexican American studies, so it was like a good like mixture of both.
Wow, that's super cool. I love that combination. So, you've set the scene for some of the things that you've been through, some of your experiences. And the podcast is on healing and awakening journeys.
Yep.
So, which one do you resonate with most or both? And when do you think that journey started for you?
I don't know. I feel like it's a mixture of both. I would say awakening, yes, but I feel like a lot of my awakening has happened like the last couple of years, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now I would say it's probably leaning a little bit more into like healing versus the awakening part of it.
Okay.
And yeah, for me, it really did start like around a couple years ago, I would say. That's when I really started to take a deep dive into healing because I don't know, I feel like I hit like rock bottom at one point because,
Mm.
ooh, that kind of got me a little emotional. Wait a second. Um, okay, so yeah, I think for me at that point in my life, I was really at a point where I was like, I know I'm a good person. So why am I not happy? Like, I think like it was like to the point where
Mm.
I was just like, I had just gone through like some difficult things with like some of my friendships and like relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And I was to the point where I was like, I feel like I help everyone. I feel like I'm a good person. I don't do
Mm.
like malicious things. Like, why am I not happy? And I think that was kind of like a breaking point for me where I was just like, I really need to figure this out because
Mm.
I can't live like this, like
Yeah.
I need to like live a better life than where I'm at right now.
Can we share each other's rock bottoms a little bit? I think if we can stay there a little, I know once we're in the healing journey or the awakening journey, we want to like breeze through that, because that's like, yeah, but I'm here now. Like, I'm not there anymore. But I totally resonate with the way that you kind of said rock bottom, and so I would like to just take a moment to maybe share each other's and like kind of unpack that a little bit, because when I started this project, I really wanted to display that a bit, you know, and I think that looking back now, I realize in some of the episodes we have unpacked the hard stuff, but maybe not that rock bottom piece. And that's one that really creates a huge change, I think, in people's lives. Of course, when you're in it, it's really hard. But when you choose to use it to cause change, positive change, it can be a huge part of your journey.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
I love the part where you said, like, I was being a good person. You know, I felt like I was giving. I felt like I was there for others. I don't understand why I was feeling this way, and how could I be like so miserable in that, you know, or so unfulfilled
Mm-hmm.
in my life. So for me, I'll take you guys back to like 2016, where I think that's really where it started for me. Quite some time ago now, but the last 3 years flew by, so I feel like, you know, it hasn't been that long. I had a breakup earlier that year, and then exactly 2 months later, my parents divorced out of kind of nowhere. Like, it kind of just happened. The breakup was hard for me because it was like my first real like love that I was gonna marry, and we were like graduating college, and so I really saw that future with that person, you know. And so it was like hard, but I remember thinking, well, at least I still have my family. Like, at least, like, I remember going in an outing with my like parents, and I was like, you know, at least I have them. And then literally 2 months later, one night I like drive into my parents' home, and my dad's gone, basically, you know, and so I find out that my parents are divorcing, and that like things are not well, and all of that. And he actually leaves the state within that same month, I think. So I
Oh,
like
wow.
lose that like connection, let's say, in that time. So at that point, I remember I lived alone, and I remember coming home and like gasping for air, you know, because it was just kind of like,
Yeah.
what the f is happening? And these are, you know, my major relationships, let's say, as well as work was something that I just had a hard time thinking that I could do for the rest of my life. I was like, I can't do a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. So I was echándole muchas ganas at work. I was doing great, but like everything was kind of caving in, you know, nothing was going well, is how it felt
Yeah.
in that moment. So I'll just preface it with that, and let's see if it gave you some time to think of some events.
No, it did. It did. Yeah. So I think for me at that time, I really like took a look at like the different facets of my life. So like work, family, my friends. You know, like how there's a sense of like, oh, if you do these things, it'll make you happy, and that's kind of like what we think, right? It's like if you're successful, like at work, you'll be happy. If you work hard, like, you know, it'll like you'll like benefit from it or things like that. So I think for me, I actually started to look at like, how do I feel at work? How do I feel with family? How do I feel with friends? Like actually like look at that and not kind of trick myself into like, Alex, everything is great. You have friends, you have family, you have a job, you like just presented, you got an award. Like, you know what I mean? Like all of
Yeah.
these things that, you know, we kind of think are going to make us happy. And
Yeah.
I realized that at work, at that point in time, I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. Like, I feel like it was all me giving. Like, I was just giving everything I could. And I was just working really hard, which I think a lot of us get into that mentality, right? Of like,
Yeah.
you just work really hard and it's going to pay off, right?
Yeah.
And I think at that time, I also just didn't feel, I don't know, emotionally comfortable with the people close to me to like really like talk about things. Like, I just didn't feel like I had that space to be vulnerable. And I don't know, like, and now looking back at it, I think it was a combination of, you know, where I was at and also like, you know, where they were at. And it was just like, I had set a lot of my connections to be me giving and not receiving. And obviously like I didn't know that, you know, when I was
Right.
like at that point in my life. But I think for me then I started to realize that I wasn't getting any I, I mean getting thing I mean that's I was getting something, right? but I wasn't being fulfilled in what I was doing. And
Yeah.
I just felt like something has to give. Like, like I can't do this forever, even though on paper it's like, oh, you're doing great, you got a job, you're helping people, like,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't being fulfilled in doing all those things.
Yeah. Ooh, I think you mentioned something so important, like the relationships, the way that we set them up, let's say, or the way that we get used to them is like, I'm here to serve, right? Like, oh, no,
Hmm.
no, like maybe they ask, how are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you doing? I'm here for
Hmm.
you, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever you need, I got you.
Yeah.
And we don't know, like you said too, like we also play a part in it because we don't know
Hmm.
how to ask help. We don't know how to say, hey, I need you, which is why we deflect, right? And we say, like, tell me when you need me.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, at that point, I think I was like, I didn't know how to do that. Like, I didn't know how to like help let people help me,
Yeah.
and I think for me, it was also like, I don't know. I think trust was a part of it.
Yeah. And you also mentioned doing the things, right? The things that are going to make us happy. Well, we're supposed to do. Like, we're good people.
Hmm. Yep.
And I feel like that was definitely the theme on my end. So, post these things happening, let's say that's when, like, the things kind of fell apart, right? But,
Hmm.
picked myself back up. Okay, that's not the end of the world, right? Like, we're going to be good.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I felt like I supported my mom in terms of like, I'm here for you. Every weekend I'd show up. What do you need from me?
Yeah.
And every weekend I would drive back home and cry, right? So showing that like,
Yeah.
I was here for her, but I didn't know how to say like, I need support too. It was kind of like, I know
Hmm.
how to support. I don't know how to ask for support. So that was one of the things that was happening. And then career wise, I landed my dream job. So, of course, when things went south in my personal life, I like dove deeper into work, right? And I
Yep.
landed my dream job, which was a job that I didn't expect to get until I was in 15, 20 years into my career. Like, it was like a consultant
Wow.
job where you worked with multiple businesses. And I knew that was like the goal, but I didn't know that I was going to get there at 25, you know?
Yeah.
And that job is what like really dove me personally deep into rock bottom because off the bat had like maybe or started gaining. I think it was like 6 months and I already had 50 small businesses that I had to like consult. There's like huge levels of imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
At the same time getting like positive feedback, which was like that should quiet the noise, but it didn't,
Yeah.
um, I had the biggest paycheck I had ever gotten. So I was like making good money. And so I was kind of like, no, I have to make this happen. I have to stay here. Like this is the best job I've ever had with the best
Yeah.
benefits. I started to wake up every day with anxiety to the point
Mm.
where I would gag a little. Like it was kind of like, I don't know, it was this weird thing that started happening.
Yeah.
And then like I would get nervous because I had to manage like all kinds of things like terminations, counselings, and then trainings. And so you're doing all of these things for all of these businesses, working
Yeah.
with, imagine working with 50 managers in a way, or like 50 business owners. They're kind of like
Yeah.
your manager. And so you're at their, like at their disposal, I guess, like
Yeah.
whatever they need.
Hmm.
And so that would cause a lot of anxiety within me, and I would drive with anxiety. I would have to turn on the air, put some peppermint on like my finger, and like
Yeah.
like smell peppermint. And the people around me didn't know what I was going through. Like they couldn't tell me you're burning out. They just told me what you said, right? Like you're doing great. You have a really good job. You're gonna be
Hmm.
fine. It's just transition. Like it's okay. Don't be nervous. just grow thicker skin. Don't be nervous. Um, and what started happening for me, my rock bottom moment was when I would get home, I started smoking, like smoking weed basically.
Yeah.
Which I had broken up with someone because of them smoking so much, and I started doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I became that person, I started being so stressed out that I would come home and numb out, basically, like smoke,
Yeah.
Netflix, DoorDash, sleep, do it again.
Hmm.
And after months of doing that, that's when I was like, what the F is going on, Priscilla? This isn't you. This was not the dream. And yet supposedly right now you're living the dream,
Yeah.
and that really messes with you. That really felt like rock bottom. And I feel like that was the start of me being like, all right, something's got to change.
It's either up or I don't know, right? Like I have to do something because this
Yeah.
is not working. No, I resonate with that a lot because I think for me, like work was something that I was constantly triggered by, and I didn't know that I was being triggered because it was so like common, like it was just happening all the time. I remember I would get these like gut punches all the time from things,
Yeah.
and I don't know, it was something like I didn't really like fully like understand, right? But like my body kept like telling me, right? Like some like obviously something's not right, right? Because it would be from like emails or like meetings or like conversations or things that I just it was like really like stressing me out. But it was weird because I had this like disconnect from like my body and like my mental almost,
Yeah.
because it was like my mental was like, oh, like we'll be fine, like we're gonna figure this out, right? But
Yeah.
my body was like telling me like something's wrong. And I think for me, part of my healing journey was like starting listening to my body, because for so long there was that disconnection that I didn't know how to like integrate those things back, and I don't know. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons as to like why I did feel that disconnect. I think that a lot of us grow up in survival mode, right?
Yep.
So either that be like we were in it or our families were in it. So then we like kind of, develop that mentality as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think when you're in survival mode, you're just kind of thinking like, how do I survive, right? It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, like let me listen to what my body's telling me. It's like, let me just get there.
Push through. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have this energy of like, and the thing is, the energy served us. I think, for example, going to college, right? You had a gut punch, and you're like,
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna push through,
Right.
And so, in a sense, it can serve a purpose, maybe, but the energy that we bring to it is so strong because of our family. It's kind of like we have to do it, so you just do it. You push through it, no matter
Yep.
what, right? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
about to have this super hard conversation. You may be like in the bathroom super nervous, but you're gonna do it. There's no
Yep.
option, or at least you
Yep.
think there's no option.
Yeah, it's that resilience, right? Like you have to, or I think I've heard it called as like grit. Like it's like that ability to be like, yeah, like I don't want to do this, I'm scared, but we just push through and we just do it.
Yeah.
And
And I think that was at some point, like by still maybe it's glorified, that grit, that
hmm
resilience. It's like we have, I think, yeah, it was a huge change for me to stop glorifying it. It was a huge change for me to be like, how about I
yeah.
don't do the things I don't want to do? How about I don't push
Yes.
myself through when my body is like, no, I'm going to be like, okay, no, like,
Yep.
yeah.
No,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think our culture, like our society, right, it does glorify it where it's like, like, oh, like you're so resilient, you're so strong, you can like do everything and things like that. And yeah, like you mentioned, like to a point, it is helpful, like when we're overcoming these barriers and obstacles and things like that. But like we can't always be in that mode, right? Because,
Yeah.
yeah, then it's like we're never doing things that we actually want to do.
Do you recall a way that like you came to, okay, I want to change this. I no longer want this for myself.
I don't know if there was like a specific moment, but I do
Mm.
think that it was like I was fed up with the current job that I had, and I was just like I need to like do something different. And then also like some of my relationships, like connections had just like ended abruptly, and I think that also kind of threw me off. So I think I was at the point where I was like there was all this like change happening, and I think I was at the point where I was just like I just need to do something different. Like this is not gonna work. And one of the big things for me too was like I don't know, I felt like I was struggling with connection. Like I wasn't able to really connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that as a common theme. in my life. Where like I was really good at being there for other people. I was really good at, helping them. But I didn't know how to like, I didn't know how to just connect authentically without being of service to someone.
Yeah.
Like I didn't
Yeah.
know how to just like be and just like connect with someone. It was always like, oh, there's this like, I'm going to help you, so I'm going to do these things.
So I'm
type of
gonna
thing.
go show up. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Later on, I realized that that's a really big way of like, you're not standing in your power when you're doing that, right? Because you're, it's like this proving yourself kind of energy. At least it was for me. I'll say that. For me, it was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna prove to you that I'm a really good person. I'm a good friend. I'm a good, whatever X. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna do all these things, and like you're gonna see that I'm like a good person. And it was almost like this like validation, right? That I wanted.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was. Now when I see it, it's like this, like you're giving the power to something else, right? Because then they get to say you are or you're not, versus you just knowing that you are that thing.
Correct. Yeah. It's like a carrot that you like chase, right? But like if the carrot, if they move it and then they move it more, then you're constantly chasing it. And also what I deal with sometimes, or when I'm coaching first gens, it's like sometimes those people don't even know they're holding a carrot for you. It's just you following it. But they're
Yeah.
never going to say the thing that you've been hoping that they say, because they don't even know you need it. And yet
Right.
you're like, oh, well, they haven't said it because I haven't done enough. They won't, maybe they'll say it when I do this, or maybe they'll say it when I show up like this, or when I give more or do more, right? Yeah.
And the funny thing is like, and then they do say it, and then we like discredit it somehow. Like that imposter syndrome kicks in. So if they're like, you're amazing at your job, you're like doing all these great things, then you're like, oh, they're just saying that because, whatever reason, like it's not real, which is funny because then it's like, I don't know, it's really complex, I feel like.
Yeah. And like you said, that's, all of these things are what I tie like to your inner there, to that power.
And then it's more solidified because it's like what you think, and it's less movable. There's no carrot, right? There's no carrot that you're
Exactly.
chasing. It's like this within yourself. And I think that's a big, shift that I also had to like go through because, yeah, I mean, for me, it was like, it was like seeking like validation outside of you. And it's like, and then like once they tell me this, then it'll be true, right?
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so important too to like know yourself, self-love, self-care, be mindful. Because when you know yourself, then you stop hoping that others tell you who you are.
Right.
Like it all ties in, but that validation comes from like, yeah, like at work, tell me I'm a good worker. Tell me who I am. Tell me what I need to do to meet the goal. Then with family, tell me so that I know. But when you like instead say, I know that I am this, I show up this way, I like this, I want to improve this, you're no longer, like you said, giving that power away. You have it within you. You're showing up to these spaces knowing who you are instead of waiting for them to tell you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like when we are trying to get it from other people, it's like other people, first of all, they don't know you as well as you know yourself. Like, you know yourself way more than anyone does, right? And then they only experience a part of you. Like, it's not like they only experience you in this certain way in these certain times, right? And I don't know, I think like once you like start thinking about like what does it mean to you, like you know yourself more than anyone else. And I think that that's the most important like opinion, right? Is like what you think about yourself. I mean, it's honestly really complex, obviously. Like it's not easy just to be like, you know what, I'm gonna not care anymore.
No. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time, and it takes not only shifting outward relationships but inward too, like the relationship that you have with yourself, and that's one that you need to work on. It doesn't happen from day to night. There's like a connection between how we relate to others versus how we relate to ourselves. So, for example, if we're overgiving and overdoing, it's likely we're starving the relationship with ourselves, and so it's another relationship that you get to work on. You're used to starving yourself, so even if you end one relationship, you're going to find another one that creates that for you because that's what you're used to. You're not used to filling your own cup. And so when you try to do that, it's hard. It's hard to give yourself that
Yes.
time, attention, love.
No, yeah, honestly, it's challenging. One example for me was like resting. I was not used to resting. I was not used to like not doing something all the time. And I literally had to like tell myself, for these 10 minutes, we're not doing something, and we need to like be okay and settle in that, right? Because it was just so like, it wasn't something that I was like familiar with. It was very weird.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because like you're thinking like, oh, you have to like take time out to like rest, and it's like, if that's not your norm, like, yeah, you have to start like building it into your life so that way you get comfortable with it.
Ooh, I was just talking to a client yesterday about that. She was
Yeah.
like, I was there in the park for 5 minutes and I felt guilty and all of these feelings that were coming
Yeah.
through. And yeah, it's so interesting when life really brings you to a space where it's like the only person stopping you from what you really want sometimes can be you. So if you really want peace, the possibility is there, but are you going to allow yourself to feel the peace? Are you going to
Yeah.
allow, okay, you have an hour to not do anything. What are you going to do with that hour? Are you going to feel it?
Exactly.
Are you going to,
Exactly. I think it's funny because for me, like, I would, even if I would do something fun, I would make it like productive in some way. It's like, oh, I'm gonna watch this amount of episodes, and I'm gonna finish this season. Like, it was like there was still like a goal, even if I was doing something that
Wow.
was like fun.
Oh my gosh. All of it ties in together, like when we get to these rock bottoms, it's so I think like the path starts to reveal itself to you, if you're like digging deeper a little bit,
Yeah.
but it can be hard. It's not easy, and there's also like a visceral fear of what happens if I change the character that I've been playing.
Yeah.
Usually the people around you that you love a lot are used to that version of you. So there's a fear internally of like, if I change, what happens? If I change, where do I get my love from? If I change, where do I get my validation from? Who am I without these things that
Exactly.
yeah.
Who am I if I'm not this? Like,
Right.
what? And that's scary. That's scary to think about. Like,
Yeah.
who am I if I am not, you know, if I'm not like providing for these people, if I'm not a good worker, if I'm not, X thing.
Yeah. And that's actually something that you and I are going to be doing a part 2. So we're going to be talking about that, right? Evolution of
Yes.
self, boundary setting,
Yes.
prioritizing joy. So I think that maybe is there anything else that's part of the journey that you would like to mention as we wrap up this part? And then we can dive it deeper into those subjects in part 2.
Yeah, I think for me, like when it came to really like healing and like starting the journey, I think that I had to really start looking around like what were some beliefs that I was upholding that weren't mine. Like what were things that I was maybe being projected on that I never thought, but like, other people did, and like I'm holding that, right? And for me, like one way that I really noticed that was like when I would meditate or if I was triggered, right? When I was triggered, I would look inward, like why am I triggered? Like, like really start like discovering like who you are, right? And I would literally hear people's voices of like what they were like projecting onto me.
Wow.
Like I would hear that, right? And it would be like a specific person, and it helped me to start identifying what the root of that was, and then also start identifying that it wasn't even my belief. Like I wasn't even the one who was like, I didn't believe that. Like just someone else
Yeah.
did, and I'm holding it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think part of the shedding part of it, right, is also like getting to the root of it and like realizing like where did this come from, and is it even like yours? Like, and if you don't believe it, why are we upholding it, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. Let me ask you some resource questions.
Okay.
What's a book that has helped you in your journey?
I like to read a lot of like Brene Brown books. A lot of her books I think have helped me to really, think about vulnerability, and then thinking about like vulnerability like with yourself, right? Because for me, a big challenge was like I wasn't even vulnerable with myself, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't actually let myself go there. Like I would stop myself from going there.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I think as far as books, I think those are like really good ones.
What is your favorite healing or mindful tool?
I think for me, just like I was talking about when getting triggered, one of the big things is like I really like to get to the root of things. It's been helpful to just like in the moment that I'm triggered, because the way that I thought about it was like I don't want to be triggered every day. You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
like constantly be in this like things are like, like putting me in this space constantly, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was like really thinking about it, but then getting to the root of it, right? Like, what is the root belief of like what's upholding this trigger, right?
Yeah. A habit that you do for yourself every single day.
Like, music has been a really great way for me to like connect with like happiness and joy. It's something that just helps me like stay connected with, my happiness,
Yeah.
because you need to put like a song that makes you feel like a bad bitch, and like that's just what you need. So I think for me, I use music a lot to like help me through things.
An influencer that leaves you positively inspired.
Ooh, okay. I mean, one of them is you, so for sure. I hope that people are following. I mean, I'm assuming that they're following you if they're on here,
It
right?
better
But
be. No.
if you're not, definitely follow. Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, I love your work, and we've talked about this, but I definitely think that you're doing some really great, amazing stuff.
Thank you.
And believe it, okay? No imposter syndrome stuff.
Okay.
Believe it.
When you said that though, I hadn't noticed that about me, but you're right. Like when you were like earlier in the episode, I like I put that in to think about, because you're right how like we're looking for that and then we get it and then we like discard it so fast. So
Right.
thank you for the reminder. Yes, I'm receiving it.
Yes. And I think, Michael Lemus also does some really amazing stuff. I mean, we both know Michael. I think you had him on the podcast
Yeah,
before.
he
but
was
yeah.
on the podcast. Yeah.
Yes. I've done like coaching with Michael, and yeah, he's really amazing.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, is there any message you have for listeners today?
If you feel like your day to day is not fulfilling, I promise you there is a way to live where you feel fulfilled. I promise you. Like, even if you feel like, I don't know what that would look like there is a life where you can feel fulfilled. And I think it takes a lot of work, obviously, we got to do healing and things like that. But I just want to say that, if you feel like you're in a place where like you're having a really hard time like prioritizing yourself or even knowing like what you want or like who you are, trust me that you will get there for sure, even if right now it feels like it's like a mountain that you have to climb. It'll take some time, but I promise you will definitely get there.
We're both proof of that.
Exactly.
We're both proof of that. All right, guys. Well, if you found this episode helpful, please make sure that you like it, that you subscribe to the podcast if you're not already, and you share it with your amigas, amigos, amigues. And remember, First Gen, that I love you, I love me, and I can't wait for you to love yourself.